Growing up, chili for me was always a red style chili made with ground meat. So when I got older and I had green chili with chunks of pork in it, my head exploded, and it is now my all-time favorite thing to make. Now this version of chili is based on a traditional recipe from Mexico called Chile Verde con Cerdo. That's green chili with pork. And when you choose the pork for this chili, you want to choose a cut from the shoulder because they braise well and they turn meltingly tender in the oven. So here we have a piece of Boston butt, and even though it's called butt, it's from the shoulder, and it weighs between 3.5 and 4 pounds. And what we're going to do is first cut it down into big chunks, 1.5 inch pieces. And as I cut it down, I'm going to trim away some of that fat, and I'm going to save the fat because we're actually going to use the fat to help build some more pork flavor in the stew. What I like to do is use 2 knives, chef knife and a boning knife, and I'm gonna first cut it into slabs that are about 1.5 inch thick, and then I'm gonna go in there and cut that down into pieces and then carve out any of those pieces of fat. And then working with one at a time, and I'm just pulling out any of the big hard pieces of fat because I want to use them separately in the chili. And now that I got the big hunks of fat out of there, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this into nice big 1.5 inch pieces. Some of them are gonna be a little wonky sides because the pork butt is lots of muscles that fit together. And when you cut it into pieces, you might have access to other pieces of fat. So you can just trim those out. And as I go, I'm gonna chop the pieces of fat up into small sizes. All right, so that is all of the meat. Just gonna toss this pork with a tablespoon of kosher salt. This will season the meat throughout and make sure it stays nice and juicy during braising. So we're just gonna cover this with plastic wrap, and we're gonna store this in the fridge for at least an hour while I clean up and we get cooking. Now I'm gonna start by cooking those pork trimmings that I saved. I'm gonna brown them in this pot with a little bit of water. This is a cup of water. By cooking this fat with a little bit of water in the Dutch oven, first, that fat will begin to render, and that's gonna be good flavor in our chili. Now second, the water's gonna pull some of the protein out of the pieces of meat in there, and that's gonna then brown on the bottom, which makes a fond, which is great for flavor, and it means we don't have to brown all that pork later. So with one quick step, we got 2 things. We got good pork fat and good browning. All right, so while that cooks, let's take a look at the vegetables. Most important are the tomatillos. Now, fresh tomatillos are best if you can find them at the store, but canned tomatillos work well here too. We want about 1.5 pounds. And if you've never used a tomatillo before, they usually come with these papery skins. You can see how fresh this one is. That skin is almost like a leaf. As they age, it gets a bit more dry and papery like this, but these are all pretty good. You see how the skin is sticking? That's because underneath this papery layer, you have the tomatillo, and this can be a little bit sticky. And so what you wanna do is you wanna peel off all these skins, and then you wanna give these a good rinse to get rid of that tackiness. Ooh, you can hear that pork sizzling in the background. Let's go take a look and see what's happening in that pot. All right, so it's been about 12 minutes and you can see all that water has evaporated off. And now the fat's come out and it's starting to sizzle. It smells really good. We're gonna get some browning around the edges of the pot and also on the bottom. And these pieces of pork are gonna turn a beautiful golden. All right, so that's gonna take another 5 minutes or so. Now let's turn our attention to all the vegetables that go into this green chili. So we have poblano peppers, which have a mild grassy flavor. You have 5 of those. 1 jalapeno for a little kick of heat, and last but not least, some cilantro, which isn't here because we're gonna add it at the end to maintain its fresh flavor. An onion, some garlic, and the thing about all these vegetables is we're not just gonna add them to the pot right away, we're gonna broil them first, really reduce and intensify those flavors and get a little bit of that char on them, because that is a key flavor in this chili. All right, so here I have a rimmed baking sheet lined with foil for easy cleanup. So here are all the tomatillos. Don't need to cut them in half, you can just leave them whole. I'm gonna add some garlic. This is 5 cloves of unpeeled garlic. They're gonna go right on the tray with everything else. Now, these vegetables need a little bit of prep. Here's our jalapeno. I'm just gonna take the stem off. I'm gonna cut it in half. Now I'm leaving the seeds and the ribs in, which we all know is where all the spice is. After we broil, we're gonna take those seeds out and determine how spicy we want things. All right, now the poblanos. We have 5 poblanos. We want to cut them in half and get rid of the stem and the seeds. Of course, I already washed these. Now, an easy way to stem and seed them is to cut them in half first. And then with your fingers, you can just peel out the stem, shake out any seeds, and then put it right on the baking sheet. Last but not least is an onion. I'm going to trim off the stem. I'm going to cut this onion into 8 wedges through the root end so that those wedges hang together. All right, so I find it easiest to peel the onions after you've cut them into wedges. Just peel off that peel and sometimes that first layer of onion, which is a little slimy or a little dried out. The trick, of course, is getting this all to fit on one sheet pan. It's gonna get a little crowded. So you want all the peppers to be skin side up. Last but not least, let's fit these onions on there. So these are almost ready for the broiler. Just gonna drizzle with about a tablespoon or so of vegetable oil. Now I have that rack set 6 inches from the broiler element. That's gonna ensure that everything gets a nice char and gets a good roasted flavor, which is key for this recipe. All right, into the broiler they go for about 10 minutes. So let's take a look at the pork we have in this pot. Now remember, these are all the trimmings. Ooh, they look good. All right, so I'm gonna take these out using a slotted spoon, leaving all the fat in the pot, of course. All right, now for the fat left in the pot and all that nice fond you see around the edges and on the bottom, we're gonna pour off all but 2 tablespoons of fat. That looks pretty good. And now let's take a look at the vegetables that have been under the broiler. Ooh. That is burned perfection. That is exactly what they should look like. And I know it doesn't look great, but it's perfect. We're gonna peel a lot of that black stuff away before we add it to the chili. But underneath are those roasted vegetables that have a really intense flavor, which is perfect for the chili. Now the veg have cooled down a bit, so they're a bit easier to handle. And now we're gonna start by taking off the skins from the peppers. I'm gonna start with the jalapenos. Now I left the seeds in them. Seeds in the ribs contain all that heat. I'm gonna scrape those out. You know, it's personal preference whether you want to add that to the chili or not. My personal preference is to add about half of them in because I like a little heat, but I know not everyone does, and this is a big pot of chili. Just gonna peel off the blackened skins. Lots of ways you can do this. I like using my fingers. Sometimes if they're a little sticky, you can use paper towels to give you a little grip, or even a paring knife to help scrape it off. And this is all going into a sauce that's gonna get coarsely chopped. So don't worry about keeping that jalapeno intact. And a little skin left on there is totally okay. Just gonna add a little flavor to the chili. All right, now for the poblanos. For these, I'm gonna lie flat on the board. And like I said, you can use a paring knife, you can use any sort of utensil to help you get under that skin and just scrape it off. Last thing to peel are these pieces of garlic. And really, they should just pop right out of their skins now that they're nice and roasted. All right, now for the tomatillos and onions, they can just go right into the food processor along with any juice that's accumulated on the tray. All right, so now we're just gonna pulse this 4 or 5 pulses. We want a nice coarse puree. You don't wanna make it too smooth. We're not looking for a smooth sauce, more like a salsa. Ah, that is perfect. Here you can see the texture of this. So it's not a smooth puree, it's just a chunky salsa. So this is perfect. Ooh, I can smell those tomatillos and those jalapeno seeds. And of course, you could add more if you want to make it a little extra spicy. And the cool thing about spicy food is that when you eat it, you're actually playing a trick on your brain. Here's how it works. In a chili pepper, the molecule responsible for the spicy flavor is called capsaicin. When capsaicin is eaten, it activates receptors in the mouth, which also happen to be the same receptors that respond to physical heat, like hot coffee, for example. This phenomenon is known as chemothesis. So the message that your mouth sends to your brain is, the temperature in my mouth is painfully high. So the brain reacts accordingly, instructing your body to react just as it would for actual heat. Your face gets flushed as blood vessels dilate to dissipate body heat. You start to sweat to cool yourself down. And the body may also release endorphins, which are natural painkillers that create a pleasurable sensation. And that's why some people say spicy food is habit forming. Now, a few other ingredients also play a trick on your brain in the same way, including ginger, horseradish, and black pepper. We've done all our prep, and now it's time to assemble the chili in the pot. And remember, I have those 2 tablespoons of pork fat. They're heating up over medium heat, and I can see them starting to shimmer. And now's when we're gonna add the spices. So we're gonna add a teaspoon of oregano, teaspoon of ground cumin. Adding the spices to the fat just allows them to bloom and really permeate through the whole chili. So don't skip this step. 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. You're not gonna pick it out, but it adds a nice good floral backbone. and a pinch of ground clove. All right, we're gonna let that cook just for 30 seconds or so until you can smell it. Those flavors are starting to go into the oil, and that's what will help permeate through the whole chili, so don't skip this step. All right, next we're gonna add the Tomatillo and Poblano sauce, 2 bay leaves, 2 teaspoons of sugar, a teaspoon of black pepper, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. Last but not least, we're gonna add the pork, which has been resting all this time in the refrigerator with that salt. So we're gonna bring this up to a simmer, and if you notice, there's not a lot of liquid in that pot because we didn't add any broth or water, and that is by design. Because as the pork cooks, a lot of liquid's gonna come out, and it's gonna turn that salsa into a lovely chili sauce. All right, so this has come to a nice simmer. So we're gonna put the lid on. Now the other trick here is we're gonna cook this in the oven, a 325-degree oven, because the oven has a nice even heat and there's no hot spots, so the pot won't scorch. All right, so it's been in the oven for an hour and a half, and now I'm gonna test the doneness of the pork with a fork. It should be fork tender. Oh yeah. I can feel the resistance on my fork is very slight, which is perfect. You want a little bit of texture to chew on. You don't want it to be fall apart, but you want it to be nice and tender. So that is perfect. So we're gonna set this aside and let it rest for 10 minutes because it's quite hot. While that rests, we're gonna toast some tortillas. Now there are a few ways to toast tortillas, but my favorite way, if you have a gas stove, is to do it right on the burner. So what I do is I turn the burner on, and then I put the tortilla right on the burner. Actually, what I like to do is pretend I'm a short order cook, and then I do all at once. Let's see, oh, see how that gets a little bit of nice char on it? I actually like a little bit more char, so I'm gonna let that go a little bit. And it takes about 10 seconds or so. That's how I like it, because that charring is nice flavor. All right, put these in the tortilla warmer. And if you don't have a tortilla warmer, then you're missing out because they stay warm in here for up to 30 minutes, which is really nice. It means you can do them ahead of time. All right, we're gonna let that chili rest. I'll finish toasting these tortillas and then we can taste. Ooh, so the chili has been resting for 10 minutes. Now there's lots of browning around the sides of the pot here. That is good flavor. You want to stir that in, along with any fat that's risen to the top. I see a bay leaf. You get to come out of the pot. There's another one lurking in there. We'll find it. The last bit of green in our green chili is some fresh cilantro, which of course we're adding at the end to preserve its fresh flavor. We're gonna add about ½ a cup. Obviously I washed it. And I'm including a lot of the small stems too, because those stems have a really nice sweet flavor. All right, time to give it a taste. A little cilantro on top. Never hurt anybody. Nice tortilla. Now these are flour tortillas because it's what I like, but corn tortillas also taste good here. Oh yeah. Age-old question, do you use a fork or a spoon? Turns out I'm a spoon person. Oh, I love that hit of acidic tomatillo, that little kick of jalapeno. And the pork is not falling apart tender, but it is super juicy and has just a little bit of chew, like a good chili. Also, I know from experience that this chili freezes like a dream, especially if you use little pint containers, thaws in about a day, and then you have lunch at the ready. If you want to make this awesome chili, don't forget to save those trimmings and brown them in the pan. Broil the vegetables for extra flavor, and cook the chili in the oven. From America's Test Kitchen at Home, a great recipe for Chile Verde con Cerdo. It's really good. Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.